And you know what's really cool is that one of the reasons I fell in love with fasting is I got so exhausted trying to teach my patients how to navigate a frickin' nutrition label. And I was like, if I can't get a very educated person to understand their ingredients and buy good quality ingredients, I got to find a different door to go in. And that's when I was like, well, how about we don't eat at all? And we can look at what the benefits of not eating are. And that's how I found fasting. So where I'd love to start this conversation is, what do we need to know about ingredients? Dr. Mindy here.
Your body is in a war zone.
Different parts of the brain get activated depending upon how stressed you are.
When you look at it from that inflammatory.
It's interesting. I mean, that has some merit to it for sure.
And you can't control everything.
I'd say.
And what about a woman who is not pregnant, but she's aiming?
Vani, the first thing I have to say is I feel like the Resetter podcast is like inviting somebody into my home. So I have to just start by saying, welcome to my home, to my virtual home.
Oh, well, thank you. It looks beautiful with all the flowers and gorgeous greenery in your back. So I'm so excited to be here, and your nice Himalayan salt lamp and everything.
Yeah, thank you. This is actually my office. It's my happy place, and it's like a jungle back here. You know, I told you in person, but I just want to, bring everybody up to speed for people who may not know you. You're a warrior, my friend. And I watched you when you were going into corporations and you were sitting in the lobby waiting for the powers that be to come out to ask why they were putting toxic ingredients into their food. And I was cheering you on from my home. And I'm just so honored to be having this conversation with you because you to me, when it comes to food ingredients, you're the GOAT.
Thank you. I'm just so excited we're connected because I've been watching you just spread the message of like real truth about food and how it affects the body. And I've just been so enamored with what you're doing. And I've started following you on social media. And then we were just kismet to meet like right after that. So it's so awesome.
Agree. And you know what's really cool is that one of the reasons I fell in love with fasting is I got so exhausted trying to teach my patients how to navigate a frickin' nutrition label. And I was like, if I can't get a very educated person to understand their ingredients and buy good quality ingredients, I got to find a different door to go in. And that's when I was like, well, how about we don't eat at all? And we can look at what the benefits of not eating are. And that's how I found fasting. So where I'd love to start this conversation is, what do we need to know about ingredients? I know we could probably talk for hours, but why do we need to care? And what do we need to know?
Yeah. So, for most of my life, I was on prescription drugs, very sick, had eczema all over my face, asthma, had intestinal issues. I had my appendix taken out. I had endometriosis. I was on 9 prescription drugs at one point in my life. And so I've been through the gamut. And in my early 20s, when I finally decided to make health my number one priority, and this is several years before I started Food Babe and becoming a food activist and all of that. And it was really that quest to learn what I was doing and what wasn't serving my body. And I just remember realizing like the first goal was like losing weight and feeling better. And I just remember falling in these traps of, for example, looking at Weight Watchers, for example, and looking at points or counting calories or counting fat grams or counting carbs, and realizing that every single one of these diets had actually one fundamental thing missing from them, which was ingredients. In Weight Watchers, you could still eat red licorice full of artificial refined sugar and red number 40 in a product, and it would be 1 point. You could eat that all day and stay within that diet, and they would say you would lose weight and feel better, right? And that's just not true. That's not real science. And when I started to delve deep into what these chemicals were doing in food and why they were there, I found out they're there for one sole purpose, and that's to improve the bottom line of the food industry. It was not actually, those chemicals were not actually created to improve the nutrition of my body or anybody else's body. It was literally to make food preserve longer and stay on the shelf so it doesn't go bad, or to make food that would normally not taste great to taste better with added chemicals and flavorings, or to make food behave in a certain way so that it tastes the same every single time. And so they create that addictive quality to that food. So people always remember that flavor and that taste. And there's all kinds of chemicals in our food supply that create an emulsification, or they add some kind of component to mimic real food, but they're food-like substances and they're not real food anymore. And they've been completely denatured in the terms of how nature intended for us to eat them. And so I realized that the most important thing that you actually have to look at in order to lose weight and feel great and start to feel really good about your body was the ingredients. And when I started paying attention to the ingredients and eliminating all of the calorie counting and the fat gram watching and worrying about my carb count and all of that stuff or points, everything started to change. I started to lose the weight. I started to keep it off without even worrying about food anymore. As long as I ate real food, I was the weight I was supposed to be. And I felt great about my body. My skin started to clear up. I went off every single prescription drug. And that's when I became the food babe, because people around me were like, whoa, what are you doing? You look totally different. You are acting totally different. You're very concerned about these ingredients you're eating, and we don't understand why you avoid all the things we're eating, and we want to know more from you. And that's when my family and friends begged me to start Food Babe, and I started it just for them, really, and wanted to teach them what I was doing.
I love that. I don't know if you've ever heard me say this before, but part of the way I see health is I always ask myself, what is the body doing? Like, why is it doing that? Because the body doesn't do anything without a specific reason for it. So when we're gaining weight, yes, we could say, oh, you ate the wrong amount of calories day after day after day. But if you've ever studied anything with the set point and how if you change your calorie output and your input, that theory completely goes away. The thing that makes the most logical sense to me as to why the body gains weight is that it has to put these toxic ingredients somewhere. And it's so smart. It knows not to put it around your heart and lungs, around your liver, around your organs. That's going to be the last place it wants to put it, because for survival reasons, that makes no sense. So it puts it around fat. And then what do? We look in the mirror and we're like, oh, I hate that fat. But actually, your body did the most brilliant thing it could do to save your life. And it did it by putting it around your belly and not around your heart and lungs. Yeah. So if we take that theory, if we take that core, then the most important weight loss tool is your ingredients.
And this is why I love this conversation we're having right now, Mindy, because I believe that, intuitively, it's so easy to understand how to eat, but it's someone like you that explains the scientific happenings behind the scenes of what's actually in your body to make it all make sense. And, after I had my children, one of the things that enters a lot of women's minds, when they have children, are like, am I going to look the same afterwards? Am I going to be, is my body going to change? Am I going to not be able to fit into the clothes that I used to have? All of these things enter your head as a woman. And it entered my head too, even though I had maintained my weight for over 10 years since that pivotal moment. And now was my time to become a mother, and I'm in my late 30s, and it's not as easy to keep weight off, et cetera. You can really, get off the bus or the train, right? And have to get back on again. And so after I had my daughter, I was floored at the fact that the weight came off at a very normal pace. By 6 or 9 months, I was fitting back into the clothes that I'd worn before. And I didn't do anything.
Yes.
All I did was eat real food. I didn't have to go on a crash diet or worry about that. And if that isn't a testament to real food working and really nourishing your body in a way that allows your body to go back to equilibrium, I don't know what is. And scientifically, you can probably explain that better, but
because there was the only reason the body gains weight is it needs a place to store toxins. and you were not. So, it puts more weight on during pregnancy. I actually just read something really interesting in this book. It's called Eve, and it's a book about all the ways that we've looked at the female body over millions of years. It's really cool. And one of the things they were saying is when we get pregnant, the reason that we gain more weight around our hips and our glutes is to store. This is how brilliant the body is. Check this out. To store omega-3, 6, and 9 healthy fats. So that when you nurse, that's the most important nutrient for the brain, for your baby's brain when you go to nurse. Now, let's say you're eating the corn oils, the cottonseed oils, the canola oils, and that is getting stored in that area. And now you are going to nurse. Not only are those inflammatory oils potentially going into your baby, but they're going to be harder to break down because those are synthetic man-made oils. So the fact that you're so clued into ingredients, that makes complete sense to me that you would drop weight so fast.
That is just amazing to hear. And like intuitively, when you look at a lot of these different chemicals that I talk about all the time, I mean, I'm thinking of really very interesting ones like dimethyl polysiloxane. This is an anti-foaming agent that they add to the majority of oils in America that they fry foods in. And this is a chemical that can be preserved with formaldehyde, which is a carcinogen, according to the FDA. Their own FDA documents on this chemical of why it's approved for use, and it says it can be have formaldehyde in it. I mean, this is insane that it's doing anything in our food system. And you wonder, like, what's happening in your body when you're eating a French fry that's been fried in that, or a Diet Coke that's coming out of a fountain. A lot of people don't realize this, but Diet Coke that comes out of a fountain machine has dimethyl polysiloxane in it. It's not the same ingredients that you would find on the back of a Diet Coke can. And so these are the type of chemicals that I believe don't belong in the food supply. I know that they can take out these chemicals and still have businesses because they're doing this overseas in Europe. When you buy a French fry at McDonald's in Britain, it doesn't have dimethyl polysiloxane. Here in the United States, it does.
Yep.
And so these companies, these food companies are American companies, and they're still serving us the toxic versions of their products. And they've figured out how to make their products healthier and better for people overseas. And I find that extremely unethical and hypocritical. And this runs the gamut, not just McDonald's, it's General Mills, it's Kellogg's. They're making Fruit Loops here with artificial dyes, but in Europe, they take them out because in Europe, they require a warning label that warns parents that it causes hyperactivity in children.
That is crazy. Okay, so just so we can pull everybody up to speed, I think the first place to start with this is, what does the FDA do for us and what does the FDA not do for us? Because 2 years ago during the pandemic, a huge article came out that the joke within the FDA is that the F is silent. So if you know what the F stands for food, the D stands for drugs. And so the joke within, and it was a huge article that came out in a major newspaper, and it was saying how they don't put enough effort into protecting the quality of food, of those ingredients. So can you talk a little bit about what the FDA is doing for us with ingredients and what it's not doing, so that if anybody's like, well, this seems a little extreme, I really hang with us here, because what we're talking about is life-saving. And you need to know that the powers that be here in America, they don't have your back when it comes to things like food ingredients causing cancer and food ingredients causing Alzheimer's and dementia. They don't care about that. They care about profits.
Yeah, there's this underlying assumption that the FDA has sat and regulated and looked at every single chemical in our food supply, and they're third-party safety testing these chemicals before they're approved for use. That's the actually opposite of what actually happens. The food companies that create the chemicals themselves submit the safety data, and then the FDA just rubber stamps it because they look at the data and they're like, oh, it's fine for use. This company says so, so we will approve this for use. And there's over 3,000 chemicals right now in the food system that have never been regulated at all. There's no safety data on them whatsoever. And so there was a very important point where the deputy director of the FDA came out and admitted that they don't have the resources to look after all of these food chemicals that are in our food supply. So it's really up to us to decide whether we want to be part of this experiment or not. And If you look at examples, and I'll tell you one very important example that will just blow your mind. Red number 3. Red number 3 was banned in cosmetics because it causes cancer in lab animals, okay? But what happened at the last minute is the maraschino cherry industry that worked very closely with the alcohol industry came in at the last minute and made a line item edit to that law and said, you know what, we're still going to allow it in food because we won't be able to make our maraschino cherries that were popular at the time with Shirley Temples and all the drinks that you would find at bars. So we're going to allow red 3 in food, but you can't put it in your lipstick. And this is how screwed
Crazy.
up. Yeah, this is an example of how screwed up the food system is. Just this week, California has now banned red 3, and they're going to have up to like 3 or 4 years to enact that. And I think that should hopefully nail the coffin on red 3 across the United States because California is such a huge market. And that's why it's so crucial for California to lead the way in a lot of these regulations in terms of food. But for so long, this was happening. And that's just one chemical that I'm talking about. This has happened across the board with several different chemicals that are allowed for use in our food.
Yeah, which, again, when you dive into this, it's so depressing. And this is why we have to take matters into our own hands. So if you're gotten this far in the podcast and you're like, oh my God, what's going on? This is a large part of why you did this cookbook. Your last book is amazing. I devoured that one as well. But I think it's really important we educate ourselves. So in the cookbook, by the way, which is awesome, and I love to cook, so I'm really excited to try a bunch of the recipes. But what I love about a well-written cookbook is that the first part of it educates you and it's lists and it helps you navigate certain things. So one of the things you help us navigate in here are the 10 ingredients that are like the worst ones. Can we go through some of those and why do we need them how do we know if we're eating them? Let's just start there.
I'm going to give your listeners a cheat sheet on how to avoid 9 of those chemicals by just avoiding one of those chemicals.
Oh, amazing.
And that, yes, if you avoid this chemical in the grocery store, you will have probably a 90% chance of avoiding the other 9 on that terrible 10 list. And that is called natural flavor.
Oh, that was so good. Okay, wait, you have to say that again. I want everybody to hear that. Go ahead, say it again.
So I have a list of 10 terrible ingredients that you should avoid in your family's diet. And if you just eliminate one of those, you will eliminate 90% of the other 9. So, and that is natural flavor. Yeah.
And so natural flavors, just so everybody knows, is at the end typically of an ingredient list. And my understanding of natural flavors is they can put small amounts of a lot of toxic ingredients in there that have been deemed gross or generally recognized as safe. So it's a mishmash of small doses of toxic ingredients. Is that correct?
That's true, but it could mean 1,000 different chemicals under that one label because the FDA does not require food manufacturers to actually list the chemicals that are within the natural flavor. So they can add adjuvants and other things that, make that flavor come to life, but they can also add all sorts of additives that trick your brain. And this is the part where I think is so important for families and women and everyone out there to recognize how the food industry has gotten away with getting us hooked to their food. Okay. So the reason we have picky eaters in this world is because of this natural flavor. When they put a natural flavor in a product, it makes it taste and look and feel the same damn way every single time. So when you are giving your kids goldfish every single day for a snack, and then all of a sudden you want them to eat better and it's a blueberry, that blueberry is sometimes sweet, it's sometimes sour, it's sometimes mealy, it's sometimes juicy. There's a variety of things happening in your child's mouth and taste buds when you're eating real food. Real food's different every single time. And so you're like completely energizing the brain to accept all different kinds of flavors when you're eating real food. But when you're eating processed dead food, that's with added flavoring that hijacks your brain chemicals into like experiencing bliss and experiencing a flavor that's not in nature, because they're creating the 1 millionth best part of the taste in a lot of those flavors. They're hijacking your taste buds. And so they're going to automatically make you more picky and not enjoy real food. And so it's up to us to take control of our little kids' bodies and our own bodies and say, you know what? I don't want to be part of that experiment anymore.
Right.
And what's so sinister about this situation is they're using the same science that was involved in getting tobacco hooked to people in terms of nicotine and all of that, and using that same brain excitotoxins that are happening in the brain in our food today. And that's why we're experiencing the problems we have.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is such a brilliant explanation, because I can tell you, and I know you've probably interacted with these people, a lot of the people we work with have serious food addictions, and they want to make changes, but they can't make changes. So if we take the theory that you just said, where somebody's been on a highly processed diet, where it's been very consistently divvying up a flavor profile to you, stimulating very consistent neurochemicals in your brain. And now we want to get them to eat better so that they can start to have a stronger health benefit with their food. What does that transition look like? How do we get them from the processed, addicted brain and taste buds over to nature's food?
I mean, I'd say at the very least, you have to start adding raw food into your diet. That's been unadulterated, that's from nature. To have something raw at every single meal. If you're going to be eating Cheetos, fine. Eat an apple with it too, right? Eat the apple first, right? You know, and so like that's one of the things I talked about in my first book way back when I wrote it in 2013. I believe that like you have to eat as much unadulterated food as possible in order for your body to get the nutrition.
Yes.
And when you are eating these processed products, your brain is constantly being energized by those flavors. And you have to make a commitment and say, am I going to allow my brain to keep doing this? Or maybe I'll opt out and not do that. And thankfully, there's amazing snacks and products out there and companies that are making food the right way and processed foods the right way. And you can eat some of those fun to eat foods still with also avoiding natural flavor and all of these chemicals that they're putting in the food to make it taste good. You know, a lot of people think it's the sugar. And I ask people, I say, is it really the sugar? If I put sugar in water and I gave you a cup of that, would you be addicted to that? Would you be drinking that all the time?
No.
That wouldn't taste good. It's the flavoring that triggers the brain to create that addictive quality of food that makes you overeat.
So that's so brilliant the way you say that, because I think a lot of people beat themselves up because they're sugar addicted. And one of the ways I like to look at the chemical addiction that we have to food is it also comes in the microbiome. And so many of those toxic ingredients start to destroy the microbiome and change the whole inner workings of your gut. And now those bacteria are also telling you, hey, go crave this food, because they're trying to stay alive. So what I just heard in what you said, and what I really want to point out to people, is that if we start to slowly get out of the processed foods and go into nature's foods, it may be a little boring for a hot moment. Like, we might not be as excited about food. Do we have any understanding of how long that would be?
I mean, like, it doesn't have to be boring. And this is the part where it's just like, people think that, like, you know, they're like, follow me on social media, or they see like all the things I talk about in front, like I won't eat McDonald's or Domino's or Pizza Hut or Burger King or any of those places. And so like my life's not fun. I'm still eating everything. I'm eating ice cream and pizza and like everything. I'm just using good ingredients. I'm still enjoying life. I'm eating croissants, you know, like all of these things, but it's not destroying my body because I'm eating real ingredients. And so one of the reasons I wanted to write Food Babe Family is because I wanted to give people a slew of recipes that are fun to make, that are easy, that everybody will enjoy when you sit down to eat. You won't have to do short order cooking and make something different for every single person in your household. You'll be able to like all sit down and enjoy something. And it's one of the reasons why I remade some of the things that have some of the biggest excitotoxins out there, like Chick-fil-A chicken nuggets that
Yes.
normally have MSG added to them if you buy them at Chick-fil-A. But I wanted to make a version that didn't have MSG, but tasted just as good. Same with their waffle fries and homemade Rice Krispie treats that didn't have, the blue one and the other things from the marshmallows that you would typically buy at the grocery store, how to choose the right marshmallows and the right Rice Krispies, the brown Rice Crisps or whatever, to make a treat that tastes great and it's so delicious. And you're putting like 3 tablespoons of grass-fed butter in there. So you're getting
Yes.
that in there. That's actually a great little treat, right? And it's like, but if you buy the regular Rice Krispies that are with BHT and like all of the other refined sugars, and then you're putting the real chemicalized marshmallows in there, that's not going to be good. Or if you buy the pre-made ones, they're even worse. And so there's a way to like navigate this over-processed and ultra-processed world, but it's still enjoy life and eat something that's really tasty.
Yeah. So I wish I had given you my kettle corn recipe. Do you have a kettle corn recipe in there?
I love popcorn more than anything on earth. That's my thing that I go to in the evening. I sit down and eat lesser evil coconut oil popcorn.
Yes.
I love that. So what's your kettle corn recipe?
Well, I came up with this when my kids were teenagers because all the information was coming out about how carcinogenic the microwave popcorn was.
Yeah.
And so and that's what they wanted to buy and like put in the microwave. So I came up with organic popcorn. I put it in avocado oil, or you can put it in coconut oil. You just something that when it heats up doesn't become inflammatory. So I pop it in our own pan. I do grass-fed butter. I put it all in a bowl, and then I add pink Himalayan salt. I like Redmond sea salt.
Yes, I love Redmond sea salt
because there's no
Same.
plastics in there. And then I dust it with coconut sugar and I mix it all together. And can I tell you how many kids when they were teenagers would come to my house and ask for that over the microwave popcorn they were getting at home?
That's amazing. Especially when it's made fresh too and it's hot. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's just great. It's so great.
Yeah.
That is awesome.
And then you also have a recipe in here that's really interesting for Doritos. And I gave up Doritos long ago because I was like, they're never coming back. I'm never going to be able to eat those. So did you just take some of these toxic foods and just like create a lab in your kitchen? How did you find that you could taste them? They tasted similar.
Well, what I would do is just use as many real foods as possible to create, a similar effect. My Doritos don't taste exactly like the Doritos that you could get in a bag. I mean, but they have way better ingredients for you, and you make them at home, and it satisfies that urge for a chip, right? If you love chips, make these instead, right? And there's better for you options of all the things out there, I believe, that like you could find just an alternative product that someone's creating or a way to make it at home. And I want people to know that like living this lifestyle isn't a lifestyle of not having what you want and not enjoying life. It's really about eating all the good things in life, but just really good ingredients.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I have 2 scenarios that I'd love to run past you that have baffled me and tugged at my heart that came during the pandemic. I was asked to go and speak to a group of high school teachers that were very concerned about their immune system. And I gave what I thought was like a brilliant food and supplement and fasting presentation to them. We did it all on Zoom. I was really excited. I come from a family of teachers, so I was really excited to give back to these teachers. And at the end of the whole presentation, one of the teachers, he bravely raised his hand and he said, "So I hear what you're saying about oils, but if I'm sitting at the grocery store and I'm looking at a jar of nut butter with an inflammatory oil or the jar of nut butter with the less inflammatory oil, with a healthier oil, that's an $8 difference. And that's $8 I don't have." And then another woman says to me, "Well, I get up at 4:30 in the morning and I go off to school. I get my classroom ready. I leave, I work all the way through lunch. And at 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I start to go home. I'm so exhausted. McDonald's is the easiest place for me to go through and grab some food." How do we help those people? They don't have time and they have limited economic resources. How do we help them?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've found is real food isn't expensive if you plan. And so one of the things that I talk about in the book that's so important is meal planning. You have to plan in advance of what you're going to eat so you don't waste food, number one. But number two, you prep your kitchen ahead of time every weekend, whenever you have time, with good ingredients so that they're available in there. And if you meal prep for those times where you're getting home late from school or you're getting home late from your classroom or wherever, you can have something available in the freezer that you can warm up, or maybe you throw in the crock pot before you leave for work, right?
Yeah.
Or the night before, that's cooking all day so that it's ready to go. And so a lot of those strategies are in Food Babe Family because I personally don't like spending all day in the kitchen. Like I'm not Julia Child. I don't want to spend all day making something and watching it proof and like all the things, right? Like I want to get in and get out and have real food and real good food. And I want to be able to feed my kids so I can go do the other amazing things that I want to do in terms of like, change the food world or run my other company.
Change the
Vani,
world.
like, right? Like I want to have time to do all this other
things.
stuff. Just little things, right?
Just take down the whole food system. Little things like that I'm excited to do.
But yeah, so I don't like spending a lot of time. And so like I want to share, it's so funny. Like the other day I got off a podcast, my book's coming out. I'm on a lot of podcasts. I'm doing a lot of interviews and I'm in my office like all day and I'm rushing out of the office and I have like 20 minutes to get food on the table, but I'm like, well, maybe I have like 10 extra minutes if the kids are playing outside a little bit longer, they won't notice that they're hungry. Cause I swear like 5 o'clock hits and they're so hungry. And I put together this amazing dinner in about right at 30 minutes. It took me less than like 10 minutes in the kitchen. It was a piece of fish that I marinated real quick while cauliflower was baking at 375 in the oven for 30 minutes. And I had just happened to put a sweet potato or two in while I was doing the podcast earlier in the day at 400 for an hour. And so like that was already done. And it was just like, we had sweet potatoes, we had cauliflower, and we had this beautiful piece of halibut. And it was like, that was a perfect meal. It doesn't need to be like expansive. It doesn't need to be like 18 menu items for dinner. It can be 3, a good vegetable, a good protein, and a nice carb, right? Like it could be really simple like that. And that's how we eat every single night. It's really simply, it's as true to real food as possible. And then we have fruit for dessert,
And which is even easier because you just pull out a bowl of cherries and some like Greek yogurt or something like that.
Yeah,
So
totally.
What I heard in what you did compared to the questions I got from these teachers, and it's not a criticism. It's more I'm right there with you in this deep desire to solve the food problem that we have, and I love how you went after the corporations. You can keep going after the corporations if you want. I've kind of decided we need to educate the people. And we need to make sure that the people understand that. And one of the biggest challenges we have is people don't realize if you do not prioritize food quality, you will have to prioritize sickness at some point. And we're not making that connection. So in the example you just gave, what I heard was you probably already had good ingredients in the house.
Yes.
And so how often do you shop? You went probably at some point in that week and you got those ingredients and that was what was there. So talk a little bit about the shopping experience.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think is absolutely crucial is like stocking your pantry with the right stuff. And so in the first half of Food Babe Family, my new cookbook is all guidebook on how to stock your pantry with the right stuff. And like, what are the right brands? What are the good ingredients? What are the companies not using seed oils or natural flavor? What are the brands that are doing the right thing so that I know what to stock my pantry with? And so every single Sunday morning, usually I go grocery shopping, or on the weekends. That's just when I go grocery shopping. Going during the week is just not an option for me. I'm too busy. And the kids have school and like we have bedtime and like everything's happening, right? So the best time to go is Sunday morning. And usually one of my kids go with me too, or both of them. And we make it a thing. And we go to the farmers markets too. And so I'm stocking as much stuff as I can on the weekend. So during the week when I'm crazy busy and I'm working and everything's going crazy and, there's school lunches to be made and all that stuff, I have the ingredients there because that's like half the battle. Like I think it's actually maybe even more, like 80% of the battle.
Yes.
Like if the food's there, I'm happy to cook it and get it on the stove and like eat it, right? But if it's not there, if I have to go shop and then unpack all the stuff, carry it up my flight of stairs, do all of that, and then cook, it's too exhausting. So you have to like break it up. You have to make it a priority, as you said. And you also can, I think, budget in a way that will allow you to enjoy the products that don't have the seed oils. Like you made that example of peanut butter. There's so many awesome grocery stores right now that are selling less expensive organic items and items that are real food. I'm thinking of Lidl, I'm thinking of Aldi, I'm thinking of Trader Joe's, Costco. Costco's the biggest consumer. Yeah, Sprouts.
Sprouts is doing amazing.
There's so many great grocery stores out there that are affordable, and you can find affordable organic goods or at least real food that doesn't have the different chemicals added to it.
Yeah, agreed. And it's funny because we started, I shouldn't say names, but I'm going to say names. When Amazon bought Whole Foods, in my opinion, they destroyed Whole Foods. And so I've been looking for other places to go find, to go shop. So we go to farmers markets. We do the same thing on Sunday. And my new favorite place is Sprouts. Sprouts has a lot of really cool, well-priced. So to your point, I think that's something that everybody, I know we have a worldwide audience, but I feel like don't forget that there's some really, and Costco, don't forget that there's some places that are Target even is trying to put some more of these healthier foods in there. Yeah. But one of the things that I see that trips people up is that damn ingredient label. Is there anything on the ingredient label that we should know about, that we could navigate? Is there anything helpful for us there?
I mean, honestly, there in terms of the calorie, the nutritional facts panel, I just feel like you should just ignore.
Yeah, agree.
I mean, it should be like it should be the second thing that you focus on. You should definitely ignore the front of the package, which is all the marketing, right? And then you should just go read the ingredients. And if the first ingredient is sugar and the second ingredient is rich flour, those are two items that you should avoid. Those are two ingredients that are on the terrible 10, right? And then if it has natural flavor, just avoid it too. And you'll see yourself. I mean, if you just go in your pantry right now, for everyone listening, and you go look and see how much natural flavor is in there, you're going to blow your mind. Ooh. The average American, I mean, I'm telling you, it's going to blow your mind, and you're going to be like, what have I been doing to my taste buds, right?
Yes.
And so when you look at an ingredient label, I believe like the number one question you ask yourself every time you sit down to eat are, what are the ingredients? You need to know what ingredients you're eating. If you don't know, you need to go find out. And if they won't tell you, if you're at a restaurant or somewhere else and they won't tell you, then that's a red flag. So if you are sitting down and you're trying to figure out what you're eating and you're eating a sandwich and you see the words monodiglycerides on the package of bread that you're eating, you need to know why you're eating that. Like, what is that substance? Okay. Yes. Well, if you Google it, you'll find out it's an emulsifier and preservative that they put in bread. They started putting it in bread once trans fats was banned. It has minute amounts of trans fats actually still in it. And so it's something that you don't want to be putting in your body. So next time you sit down and have a sandwich, you'll think, oh, well, I need to buy a bread without monodiglycerides because this is an ingredient. I don't know why it's in there. It's just to serve the food industry and not my body. It's not a nutritional ingredient. And it's something that I shouldn't be eating. And so once you start to ask yourself, what are the ingredients I'm eating? Then you can say the next question, which is, are these ingredients nutritious? And you don't need to be a rocket scientist, nutritionist, or doctor to understand if the ingredients are nutritious or not. You can use your common sense.
Yes.
And then you find out, where are those ingredients coming from? Are they made in a factory laboratory, in a chemical factory, right? Are they things made from a factory farm, right? In terms of meat. And so you start to ask yourself these questions. And if you just ask yourself those 3 questions every single time you sit down to eat, you will start to make better choices because you'll stun yourself at the crap that you're eating.
Yeah. And a really good hack for those people that have kids, have them go Google it. I did that one time. My nephew asked me about some frozen waffles he had bought at Trader Joe's. And he was like, or I think my parents actually bought them. And he was like, "Are these healthy?" And I said, "Read the ingredient labels to me." And he couldn't pronounce them. He was like 13 at the time. And I said, "Go Google it and tell me what those were." So off he went. Like 45 minutes later, he came back and he's like, "Some of these cause cancer. How can they put that in our food?" And like after that, it was like I didn't have to teach him anything. He taught himself. So I think it's really important.
That is such an important lesson, Mindy. And I just want to stop you there
Yeah.
because like, oh my gosh, that right there is what we need to be doing as parents. Like,
Yes.
I believe we have the greatest responsibility more than any other generation to teach our kids the truth about what's happened to our food. And that starts with learning ingredients. And if we teach them that, they automatically will become healthier eaters and be aware, and they'll teach their friends. And it'll be such an amazing thing to see. And they can start a whole new revolution of better for you companies because they'll start to reject the legacy companies of the past and start to vote with their dollars. And it'll be just this amazing thing that I see happening. And I see it with my own daughter, with her standing out in school and talking about how she doesn't eat artificial food dyes. And she's 6.5, and it's like she's educating those around her. And I've taught her in such a way that we don't shame anybody for their food choices,
Right.
but we teach them the truth about what's actually in our food so that they learn about these ingredients. My parents didn't have this information. And it's probably why your parents think Trader Joe's is great. Because my mom thinks that everything's organic at Trader Joe's. It's hilarious. She goes, "Oh, it's organic. I got it from Trader Joe's." I'm like, "Well, Mom, not exactly, right?"
No. Trader
It's not-
Joe's gives the illusion.
Yeah,
gives
yeah.
the illusion it's healthy.
It's not
Yeah.
that easy, right? You got to be a little bit more investigative there, Mom. But they didn't have this information at their fingertips like we do about what's been done to the industrial food supply. And we have this information available. There's resources. I mean, I've written 4 books now on this topic that you can take and become an expert at this. And then you can just, share that knowledge with your children and your family. And then they're going to have a healthier life. You're going to save their life, I believe.
Yeah. And one of the things I used to tell my kids, if people who have, once they get to those teenage years, even the middle school years, they start pushing back on you a little bit. And I used to get questions. One day my daughter said to me, "Why do we always eat organic? Like when I go over to my friend's house, they don't always eat organic." And my response was a loving response of like, I've just done a lot of research and I know what's going to help build you a healthy body and what's going to actually be toxic for your body. And not every family's done that, perhaps. So maybe you could just share it with them when you learn something, share it with them. But I didn't make her feel bad. I made her feel empowered. Like
Yes.
I've just taken an extra step and I really am conscious about what we're eating as a family. So I found that to be really helpful. The second thing that is a great trick that works so well for even adults is I made a rule that no toxic ingredient came into our house. So if they went to a birthday party, if they went out with friends as they became teenagers and they wanted to eat crappy food, do it. Just our house was a food sanctuary and we would not bring bad food in there. And that
I love
worked
it.
really well too.
I love it. I love it. And that's one of the things that parents forget, that they're in control. And
Right.
so if you're going to bring in Doritos and Cheetos and eat them in front of your kids are going to also want that. But if you make your food, your pantry a sanctuary, like you said, that food's not going to be available in there and they're not going to have it. And it's going to be better for you too. So you might as well make
Right.
those choices for your family and have some rules around what we bring into our household. I love that because that's exactly how my pantry is. I would say it's very hard to find natural flavor in my pantry. It's probably in like the Yum Earth, like natural organic gummy bear versions that I have like hidden in the back for my kids, like, that they get at birthday parties or wherever, but that's it. And so if you make that decision when you're buying food, you're not going to have those struggles in terms of
Yeah.
saying no to your child when they want to eat this or that. It's going to be like, okay, enjoy what's in the pantry.
Or no to yourself. I mean, you can take that same
Yeah.
theory for those that are listening and they're like, maybe they don't have kids, but they're like, I keep tripping up with my food choices. So could you just make it a rule that you would only bring the healthy food in? And if that's a hard, you can get Vani's book and really look at like I love that you have all these cheat sheets. So thank you for that. That makes it so much easier for all of us. So you know what to not bring in. I love that we can say natural flavors, definitely a no, because everybody listening to this podcast can now go and look in their pantry and get rid of everything with the natural flavors. So you can create this food sanctuary. And then when you go out, if you want to have a soda, if you want to have fries, every once in a while, it's like your jam, fine, go do it. But you need one place in your life that is a food sanctuary, and the home is where it should be. And I recently tested this on a man who was food addicted, who came to me and he said that buffalo wings and sodas were like, and fries, he couldn't overturn that addiction. And he was over 300 pounds. And I got him down, he's now down 150 pounds by just making smarter food choices, eating the crap outside of his house, and then attaching fasting to that. That's all he did. And he dropped 150 pounds.
That's awesome.
It's insane. So, okay, the next ingredient I have to work through with you is one that I'm really struggling to educate people on, and that's oils.
Yes. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about good oils and bad oils? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people really confused about this.
Well, here's an oil that you may not buy at the store, but is in probably every single restaurant across America, with the exception of just a few, right? Probably maybe 2 to 3% probably don't use this oil, but it's cottonseed oil. Cottonseed oil is a byproduct of the cotton industry. It's actually raised like a textile, so it has different EPA standards. So the types of pesticides that are being used and the amount of pesticides being used is totally differently regulated than food. But they found a use for cottonseed oil, which is a byproduct of the cotton industry, and they decided to use it in food. And the way it gets into our food is by fry oil, like anything that's fried. And a lot of these fast food chains or restaurants out there, In-N-Out used to use cottonseed oil before I called them out. They changed it since, and now it's sunflower oil. But cottonseed oil is not only using those heavier toxic pesticides, but it's been genetically engineered as well to withstand heavy doses of Roundup and glyphosate, which now has been implicated to cause cancer across court cases across America. They're awarding plaintiffs billions of dollars. And also, not to mention that it completely destroys our gut bacteria. And you can probably talk to the science of that quite a bit. And so we have this cottonseed oil that is, doused with all these chemicals. And it's not even a real food that we should be eating. And then the way it's extracted, they're using chemical solvents like hexane, which the FDA doesn't regulate the amount of residue that remains in food. So this is something that is a carcinogen and something that we don't want to be consuming. So the way it's produced, it's deodorized, it's bleached, they're using these chemical solvents. And then the way it's, grown is also toxic. And so this is one of the worst things that you could have in your body. And this is actually how corn is made too: corn oil, soy oil, and canola oil. And so
those are the worst.
Yeah.
Did you say those four are the absolute worst?
Yeah, absolute worst. And so this is something that we want to avoid, because what happens is it ends up having high linoleic acid in it. And that's what's turning on cancer cells, is what I've been reading in the literature.
Yep.
And maybe you could talk more about the scientific, facts behind that. But that's what's really scary to me, that it makes sense in the way that it's produced. Like when you're asking yourself, what are the ingredients? Okay, are they nutritious? I'm not sure about that. But then where do they come from? Like, how are these oils produced? When you ask yourself that third question, you're like, oh my gosh, like it's so denatured from where it started that of course our bodies can't handle the load of that. And then the fact that the majority of oils that are being used across, like in salad dressings to saute your food at restaurants, like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Every time you go out to eat, you're being exposed to these high omega-6 fatty acids and these, genetically engineered oils. And then we're wondering like why we're getting all of this disease. And so this is stuff that you have to change. It's like the number one thing you have to change
Yes.
when you start to eat a real food diet. If you just change that and say, I'm going to eat only olive oil and avocado oil and coconut oil and grass-fed butter, if you just eat those 4 things and change the way you make your food at home, and you eat the majority of time at home, and why it's so important, why I wrote another cookbook, is because I believe when you take back control of your food, you need the resources and the recipes that you can make really quickly with good ingredients. And when you start to do that, you start to realize a level of health that you never thought was possible, because your body starts automatically feeling better.
And I have a theory that you don't need motivation to get healthy, you need momentum. And so when you start to eat the right quality ingredients, you get that momentum. You get a new experience with your body. You kind of go, oh, my joints move a little bit better. I think a little bit better. I'm sleeping a little bit. And it's so subtle, but you gotta really check in with yourself.
Yeah.
And to me, what you said is so spot on. I want to make sure that everybody heard that, because the number one food macro, in my opinion, that needs to we need the most attention outside I love your natural flavors one. I think that's brilliant. And I look at that from like a neurotoxic lens and like how, and the food addiction lens, but from a, this is killing you lens, it's the oils.
Yeah.
The oils are killing you. And literally, like, if you do not know this, I'm going to say it again. The oils are killing you because your cells are made up of a bilipid membrane on the outside of that cell. And when you're eating cottonseed oil, you're gumming up that cell. And the nutrition can't get into the cell now, and toxins can't get out. And now you've got like a fire inside that cell, and all kinds of genes will be triggered. So the 4 oils, just so we're clear, that you should be eating, go ahead and say those again, just so I'm clear.
Grass-fed butter, avocado oil, olive oil, and coconut oil.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
what do you think of the difference between, well, let's just say this. What do you say to people who are like, well, my doctor told me to stop eating coconut oil because it's raising my cholesterol?
Well, I'll tell you why your doctor's so confused is because the canola industry, actually, Unilever paid scientists and doctors at the American Heart Association to sponsor a study to try to, to basically demonize coconut oil, and the study was flawed. And then of course the conflict of interest involved in that. I remember when that first came out like a few years ago. I mean, I feel like some version of that study has come out every 4 or 5, 6 years over the last 30 years or so. And they want people to believe the saturated fat in coconut oil is unhealthy for you, but it's actually a medium chain triglyceride. It's actually really healthy for you. You can metabolize it much better than any of the seed oils out there. And then it does kind of help your metabolism too. And maybe you can talk about why that is. But it's so funny when those articles started hitting the web where they're like, coconut oil's not healthy and it's never been healthy for you. My mom, who doesn't love the taste of coconut oil, is like texting me like, I told you so, like sending me these articles. I was like, Mom, do you know who sponsored this, study and who is behind all of this? Like, are you kidding? Do I need to take you to school right now? And so it's like, and this is what is beautiful about the fact that podcasts like yours, Mindy, is demystifying the playbook behind what the food industry does to confuse us about what's actually healthy.
Yes. Yeah. And thank you. And one of the things I have like 3 areas that I feel like I can have a deeper discussion that aren't just little sound bites. And my obviously books are one. My YouTube channel, we can now at least go 15 minutes and educate people if they'll hang in there. And then a podcast like this. And I've really thought deeply about this recently, and I hope everybody hears this, is that it is now time for us to be critical thinkers. We really have to dive into asking, like, I love the way you're like, ask yourself this. But if you just if you assume what's in the supermarket is absolutely vetted and in your best health interest, I really want to ask you to think differently. It's time for us to educate ourselves. And in a world where we're scanning through Instagram and saying, I like you, I don't like you, and we're like cutting off the conversation, we're losing the depth of nuance that needs to be had like in a conversation like this. Don't you think? I mean, I really
Yeah,
want to empower
absolutely.
people to educate themselves,
Yeah.
educate yourselves.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
okay, I have two last questions for you, but the first one is literally a family conversation. So we love mineral water. And our favorite mineral water for many years was Topo Chico.
Oh,
Until I know.
me too. Me
Until I
too. Me
saw
too.
one of your posts. And
Me
I literally
too.
came home and to my family, I'm like, you guys got to see what the food babe just said. Did they fix Topo Chico? Is it still?
I think they're trying to. I want someone to independently test it and tell me it's okay. But it tastes so good. It has that bite for like that
Yes.
crispness of a mineral water, like that sparkling mineral water. Oh, it's so good.
It's so good.
It's so good, right? And the way the bottle is shaped, like everything is so great about it. It's like
yes.
I would sit down at the end of the night and just drink that and with my popcorn, and I was just, I was so happy. But anyways, no, I don't drink it anymore because of that. They found high levels of PFAS, like forever plastic chemicals in it. And so now I do Mountain Valley Spring. I have it delivered to my house. And so I have cases and cases of it in my garage. And it doesn't hit as good as Topo Chico, but it does the job. So
Okay. Well, I'll have to take that back because everybody was really mad at you in my household for a short
I
period.
was mad at myself. I was like, I can't believe I've been doing this to myself. And I'm so mad about it that I have to share it. And I'm sad because it's so good.
It's so good. It's so good. Okay, so just finishing this conversation up, what I want to do is this is too important of a conversation to lose people in all the information we've given. So if you were to give like the top 3 things that people could do right now after this podcast to change the quality of their food, what would those be?
Remove seed oils, remove natural flavors, and eat unadulterated out of a package or a box food as much as possible. So do those 3 things and watch your body change.
Easy, so easy. Okay, then taking you on a totally different turn, the last question I always ask every guest this season, I have a theme each season. It's a 2-pronged question. Do you have a self-care routine that you do throughout the day? And what do you think your superpower is that you bring to the world?
Okay. So my self-care right now is not so great.
Yeah, well, you're launching a book. It's book. You get permission this week. In 3 weeks, no.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like every morning I wake up, my husband makes my lemon water in my coffee because I'm nursing a child still, and I'm getting their breakfast and their lunch is packed and like all that kind of stuff going on. And so he takes care of me in that way. And so I feel very like nourished first thing in the morning because he's got my lemon water ready. I gulp that down and then, I'm ready to have breakfast. And so it's so nice. So that's kind of how my morning starts. And then I always do some kind of activity, like some kind of exercise during the day because it helps my mental state. Like I feel like it's my anti-anxiety medication.
Yes.
It just makes me a happier person. I'm able to be more present with my kids and more relaxed and like just everything. So that's kind of like a non-negotiable. I mean, sometimes on the weekends, I'll give that up to like go on a long bike ride with the kids or like do something as a family. But during the week, it's a non-negotiable. And then I sit down with my kids 3 times a day and have meals with them. It's one of the most important things to me to sit down with my family and have meals that, we don't have screens allowed. We sit down together as a family. We sometimes read to our kids, like if they're feeling a little antsy or whatever, like we'll read to them. And that's a nice time just because when you read to your kids, it's great for them. But like also we'll sit and have conversations and it's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
And my kids are 2 and 6.5. So I'm starting really early in terms of like letting them know kind of how our family dynamics are in terms of how we eat. And so when we go out to a restaurant, I can take my kids to a super fancy place because they sit and they eat there and they're used to it without electronics, and they can like kind of entertain themselves with like a book or two, that kind of thing. So it's great for me because one of my passions is to eat like really long lunches in France and like just enjoy and sit there and like, have a 3-hour conversation with someone you love. And so it's just like, that's just like my idea of heaven. Oh, I love it.
That is life. That's
so
quality
much.
of life. Yeah.
Yes. And so I just want my kids to, if I can, pass that down to them, then that would be great. And so, and then, I try to get some outdoor time usually.
Yes.
In the afternoon after my kids, like one of my kids goes to school. So when she gets back, we like to try to stay outside as much as possible before dinner. And then we have dinner, and then we do bath and bedtime. And then at night, when they go to bed, it's kind of like my time on the couch. And that's when I get out my popcorn and my used to be Topo Chico, now my Mountain Valley Spring. And, I just enjoy some time with my husband, or we watch a show or something like that together. But, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. One thing I have to say on the meals and family, I think this is really another key important piece, is just how important for your life quality it is to sit down in a positive environment, eating good food and having good social connections. What we did in my family is every Sunday night was a night everybody had to be home, and made a big elaborate meal, and you could invite your friends if you wanted, and we would have these really really cool conversations. So all these kids have grown up in our household with this Sunday night. Like, they wanted to come.
I love that. I want to start that.
I highly recommend. And do you know these kids are now in their early 20s, and when they come back at the summertime, they'll say to us, I had one kid whose parents have taken him all over the world. He's been at the nicest resorts, and he saw us sitting at our dining room table, and he said, I have had the best food with the best conversations sitting at that dining room table.
That's
and
amazing.
I looked at my husband, and I'm like, we did our job. We did our job.
Done. I'm done.
Yeah, done. That was amazing. So, okay, you have to tell me your superpower before we close this down.
Okay, so I think my superpower is tenacity.
I was just gonna say that.
I don't like to give up. Like, like when Kraft decided to remove artificial food dyes out of mac and cheese, it was after 4 or 5 times of telling me no. And it was after me showing up at their headquarters with 350,000 petitions and, writing a million letters to them and like doing everything that I possibly could, going on 100 TV shows and like, doing all this stuff, right? I exaggerate a little bit about the 100 TV shows, but it felt like that at the time.
Yeah.
And they just kept saying no and no and no and no. And I just wouldn't let up. And that's, I think, my personality. And I don't know how I got that. I have no idea. But I probably think my dad had something to do with that, because he came here with nothing as an immigrant and had to build everything. And when he was like one of the only people in our group of neighbors and people politically, and he was always on the other side politically and like standing up for what he believed in and really feeling pride around that. Like that just, I remember those moments, and I feel like it's just like, don't let anybody ever tell you no is what I learned growing up. Yeah. And so hearing those no's, I just always try to wait until a yes. So anyway.
Yeah, it's funny. I was going to say, I was trying to think of what you would say your superpower was. And I'm like, if she doesn't say it, I'm going to say tenacity. And because I feel like that's one of my superpowers too. And you know what
That's why I love you.
Right? You and I need to go do something together, because down the whole food system. So I want to be your Robin to your Batman. How about that?
I love it.
But you know what it is it's injustice. The thing that will get me up out of bed and put my superhuman cape on is injustice. And everything we've been talking about today is not right for human life. And I just have to thank you, because the world is a much better place with you in it. You have saved already so many people from cancer by your tenacity. So I'm a super fan. So thank you so much, Vani. I adore you. So thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much.
And actually, I should just throw this out. How do people find you? How do they know where to go grab everything that you've got?
Yeah, you can just come over to foodbabe.com. All the information is there. We've got a beautiful page set up for this new book, foodbabefamily.com, and you can come follow on social media, The Food Babe. Yeah, that's it.
Beautiful.
And check out Vani as well. Vani is my company that I started, and it makes some of the world's best supplements, protein powders, bars without ingredients that you don't need in your body. All the unnecessary ingredients have been eliminated. So, yeah.
The powder is off the hook. So are the bars. But I've been experimenting since you gave us some at the Hay House event. So, yeah, I can say they're amazing. So
thank you.
Thank you, Vani. So grateful for you.